The Detroit Lions have a forgotten man, and don't tell me you guys didn't forget about this guy last year when he was gone. And remember, we had multiple players. One we all remember, Jameson Williams. One we might remember, Quintez Cephas. One all of us forgot, and then the one that most of us forgot, which is C.J. Moore. And when you look at these gambling suspensions, as we look back on it a year later, it kind of is giving us this belief of like, what happened with all of that? And it would be so easy for a player to just write it off. It would be so easy for a player to just kind of ignore it and be like, I'm back. It's behind me. I don't want to talk about it. But that's not what CJ Moore is doing. But what we're going to talk about in this video is, number one, the response that he gave, because it was his first time in front of the media. I was able to watch him go in front of the media and own it and take it like a man and admit to his mistakes. And then we're going to talk about what he actually does for this team. I think we have so much talent that's been brought in on this team that a lot of us forget that there are players from 2 years ago that are still can be good, solid contributors on this team. Before the gambling suspension, he signed a 2-year deal. So the team was like, no, we want you to not only be in this year's plans, but or last year's plans, but also this year's plans. They wanted to see a little bit of a future with him, and he was an absolute special teams ace. He was an ace. So CJ Moore said that leaving has been a blessing and a curse. In other words, being suspended. The year away from football, he said, was a blessing and a curse. On one hand, he got married. He welcomed a son. It's his second kid, Kobe, to the world. In growing his family, the defender gained perspective. However, the year away was a disciplinary action from the NFL after he violated the gambling rules. So he had to confront the issue. Here's what he said. First thing he said when asked about it. He said, I know the rules. Just being immature, just gambling. He said, losing control of being aware of exactly what I was doing, just a careless mistake. He went on to say, like, there's no excuse for it. I shouldn't have been doing it. And he said that he wasn't fully aware of all the rules, but he is now. So here's what he kind of did. He owned it. He sounded like an adult, if I can be honest, talking about it. It is not an easy thing. A full 1-year suspension. A full 1-year suspension is a heavy price to pay. And for a fringe player like him, oftentimes that can symbolize the end of the career. It really can. All right? He then went on to say, I shouldn't have been gambling in the first place or anything like that. I failed in that area. He is taking responsibility in a sport where pride is rampant and everybody is just trying to make excuses for everything they do and everything that they say. CJ Moore is owning the mistake he made, and he's trying to become a better player because of it. I love this. And I'm going out on a limb right now, and I'm going to tell you, this dude is going to make this team. He's going to make this team. He might, I mean, like, it's May. I totally understand that. I think that he is going to make this team. When you look at our depth chart, and then I want to talk about what kind of player he was and what he was good at. When you look at our depth chart where he plays at safety, it is arguably the thinnest position on the defense. Now, if Brian Branch comes in and plays some safety, it's not so thin. But behind Joseph and Melifonwu, what do we have? What's there? Like, there's times where Branch might be forced to play up there. I'm telling you, CJ Moore is safety number 3 on this team right now. If you're just talking safeties, and usually you're keeping at least 3, sometimes 4. Now, you usually keep 5 DBs. I don't think it's the end of the world if the Lions keep 6 DBs, 3 safeties, because they have DBs that can play safety. So they can keep Davis, they can keep Mosley, they can keep Robertson, they can keep Arnold, they can keep Branch, and they can keep Rakestraw. They can keep them all and then take 3 or even 4 safeties. But either way, CJ Moore is making this roster. So what kind of a player was CJ Moore? He was the kind of player that when he was on the field, you said, oh, thank goodness it's not Will Harris, right? If you remember that. I think CJ Moore would have had some playing time in the back end this year. But that's not all he was. He was a special teams ace. All right. Dave Phipp, the special teams coordinator, actually talked about this. He said he is the type of player, it's great to have him back. And we'll talk more about the personality, but he said just a fun guy, a nice guy. Also, with his athleticism, he's a very sudden guy, so that's helpful. And he was signed on a 2-year contract to play special teams. And I think right now, when you look at our defensive back room, a lot of those guys on the back end of the defensive backs usually are special teams guys, but there's so much talent in that defensive back room, you have to be wondering to yourself, like, where are the special teams guys coming from? So that's one of the things that I'm absolutely looking at for CJ Moore, and this team values special teams. The Lions value special teams, as they should. In fact, they went out and traded up to get a 4th-round pick for a guy that his job for year 1 will likely be special teams. Special teams. All right? Fuck. All right, so anyways, let's talk about a couple of things here. On the field with CJ Moore, the last time we saw him was in 2022. He did not get a ton of snaps, 108 about to be 115. All right. And of those, he had 77 coverage snaps and only 28 run defensive snaps. He had a coverage grade on PFF of 75, an overall grade of 70. This falls in line with what he is as a defender, like throughout his career. He has been pretty consistent with that. In 2021, he had his most coverage snaps where he got a 62.3 grade. And these are just some of the things that when I look at it, I'm like, all right, what are the important parts? Passer rating when allowed, 39.6. Like, look, I'm not saying he's a starting safety in this league. He's 5'11", he's 191 pounds. But he has the ability to come in and help both on special teams and when you need him in a pinch to be able to play on the defense. I thought it was very interesting. They interviewed CJ Moore. They talked to Jack Campbell. And when they were talking to Jack Campbell, our second-year middle linebacker, he kind of out of nowhere just started talking about CJ Moore. And he started talking about how great it is to have him there, that he's one of the nicest guys he's ever met, that he's a good communicator on the back end. Like, he just was going off about CJ Moore. And I think so many of us, I don't know, you let me know if you're one of these people, just kind of wrote him off. Just kind of wrote him off as like, you know what? He got caught gambling. Maybe he's not a good guy. You know, maybe he's not taking this seriously. Well, I don't know. And by the way, CJ Moore said that too. He said, I was immature. And I'm telling you right now, when you listen to that interview, when you hear his response, when you hear what the coaches say about him, and when you hear what his teammates say about him, this is a very mature 28-year-old man that I think absolutely has a place on this team unless they go out and get something different in free agency. All right. Thanks for watching. Hey, we're almost there. 20K, 20,000 subs. We're so thankful for this community. Keep watching, and we'll see you on the next one.